Hello, my name is Christy DeVlieger, and today I am talking about the monomyth. A term coined and introduced by Joseph Campbell, the monomyth is a flexible framework that also has stackable elements. What if you had a tool that you could use to check the progress of your story? That's the power of the monomyth. The monomyth, or hero's journey, examines the stages of the hero who goes on an adventure, faces a crisis, and returns victorious. The monomyth is currently being applied to a variety of fields. Its importance is emphasized by the role of storytelling in web content, advertising, and marketing. It has also been applied to the research process. In 2017, City University of New York librarians published an article on their use of the hero's journey in the research process. Collaborating with instructors, the research process was introduced to students as a personal hero's journey, a framework I then applied to my own research process as I studied the framework of the hero's journey. At its base form, the monomyth consists of three parts: the separation, the initiation, and the return. The separation is the stage where the hero sets out on their journey, seeking, perhaps reluctantly, adventure. During the initiation, the most important part of the journey happens. The hero arrives. The final part is the return, where our hero has finished whatever they set out to do and has obtained the thing that they needed and now has to get home. The research process is similarly set up. The researcher goes into deep research mode, brings back what they have found to discuss with their mentor, and creates something to share with the scholarly community. Typically, the hero's journey is viewed as a set of 12 stages. These stages can take on many forms and be applied to many stories, particularly epics, narratives, and trilogies. In your writing process, these can be used during the planning stages, as a checklist while you're writing, and then as a tool while editing to sound out missing elements of a narrative. The 12 stages are the ordinary world, the call to adventure, the refusal of the call, the meeting with the mentor, the crossing of the threshold, trials, allies, and enemies, the approach to the inmost cave, the supreme ordeal, the reward, the road back, the resurrection, and finally, the return with the elixir. During the separation, the hero begins in the ordinary world, where they're lacking or something is taken from them. If something is taken from our hero, often a rescue party may serve as the next stage, the call to adventure. I had always considered a career in library science, and I've had an interest in the monomyth for a decade. After hearing about the Library Summer Scholars Program, I realized it offered the opportunity to create a tool to assist other writing students. The call to adventure is where our hero's goal is established. They've been given a challenge, a problem, or a journey to undertake. I completed the application for the Library Summer Scholars Program, and I then met with Hazel McClure, the head of the program. Afterwards, I had to complete a panel interview where I pitched the idea for a tool on the monomyth. Sometimes the third stage, the refusal of the call, is skipped, such as when we have an eager hero who has sought out adventure for themselves. Typically, though, this is the stage where our hero is set along the correct path. This can be by an acquaintance, an act that occurs and tips their hand, or maybe the work of a mentor. Having decided to pursue the process of becoming a Grand Valley State University library scholar, I skipped this stage of the journey. One of the most important stages is the meeting with the mentor. Here, the hero gains preparation for the adventure ahead. A wise figure provides what the hero needs to commit: advice, guidance, or perhaps an item. But sometimes this mentor doesn't show up until they've entered this special world. I met with my mentors before the program began and found them to be excellent resources. This meeting allowed me to set guidelines for my research, as well as inform my decision to attend the Michigan Academic Library Association, or MIALA's, 2019 conference. I also found over the summer that the other mentors and Grand Valley State University librarians were helpful with the training I needed as well as resources. The fifth stage, the crossing of the threshold, is where our hero leaves the separation stage and enters into the initiation. Our hero has finally committed to the journey and now enters the special world. Often, in order to do so, they have to face a threshold guardian, which serves as their first test. At the beginning of the program, attending Miala's conference served as an introduction to academic librarianship and the topics of the library cohort meetings. I also began to collect related scholarly articles and requested books from the Grand Valley Library catalog. During the Trials, Allies, and Enemies stage, our hero must prove that they are actually a hero and learn the rules of the special world. This is the first stage of the initiation. Our hero will make allies and enemies alike and often forms a party as they head to the location of the ordeal. This is often the most winding part of the journey, and the research process is no different. One of the research topics I studied was the heroine's journey, and I struggled with whether to include it in my final product. The library cohort meetings taught me about open access resources, digital librarianship, and the invisible work of the library, such as the HSP training I took to conduct an online survey of current knowledge. The approach to the inmost cave is the edge of the end of the world. The other side is where the object of the quest is hidden, maybe even in the land of the dead. For my research journey, this was pulling it all together. I knew what I wanted to do with all of the research that I gathered, but I wasn't quite sure how to, particularly with the heroine's journey information. I also took user accessibility training and learned how to use the libguides platform. On the other side of the brimstone, there is sure to be dragons, and this is our hero's supreme ordeal. The supreme ordeal is death in some form, be it physical, spiritual, or psychological, such as the death of an ideal. Turning my written notes into digital content was incredibly challenging due to the time it took, as well as finding Creative Commons images. Eventually, I created my own graphics. You never have as much time as you think, and one of the largest costs of time overall was the heroine's journey. I spent so much time deliberating on whether to include it or not to include it. If the hero is successful, they get the reward. Of course, if they're not, then they have to go back to the beginning and try again. But if they have been successful, they've successfully defeated death, and they've now achieved the treasure, weapon, knowledge, or reconciliation that they sought. This isn't the end of the story, though. The hero must bring the reward back to the ordinary world where they began. My reward was the final product of the subject guide, as well as the knowledge of the monomyth that I gained. Being able to recognize and use the stages in what I read gives my analysis and appreciation of the craft of writing an edge. Our hero now enters the stage of the return. Despite obtaining the reward, they're not finished with the journey, only the quest. They have to begin the road back by making the choice to return to where they began with the reward that they've earned. Our hero must face the consequences of their actions, though, such as fighting remaining enemy forces. In some cases, our hero is reluctant to return and must undergo the next stage before committing to. In many ways, my road back was writing the abstract for my first presentation. I had to commit to what I was going to include in the subject guide. It was the moment of truth for the heroine's journey and whether I followed through on my investment of my time on the subject. In a lot of ways, even choosing the title for my abstract was a struggle. I wanted to do a pop culture reference to Star Wars, but I couldn't decide whether I wanted to use the Monomyth Strikes Back or the Monomyth Returns. During the resurrection stage, the hero faces one final test before being reborn or miraculously transformed in some way. Often this is just in the way that they view the world. At the end of the summer, I faced my resurrection during the oral presentation that I gave at the Summer Scholars Showcase. I had to distill all of the information that I deemed important enough for the guide and turn it into a 10-minute speech. Finally, our hero returns with the elixir, triumphantly bringing back what they were originally lacking. For my research, the elixir was the monomyth in all of its forms. The Monomyth Subject Guide, accessible on the Grand Valley State University Library website, serves as a digital representation of this knowledge. But it's also the presentations that I haven't given yet, this recording, the posters I've designed, the way I've used it in my own writing and in the classroom, and the ripples that it creates in its audience. Earlier I mentioned previous applications of the monomyth, in particular to the research process, but it has applications reaching far beyond that. Many stories fit this framework, making it a useful tool for analysis, planning, and editing a story, but it's also being applied to the tarot, modern pop culture, marketing and branding, and of course screenwriting. Scholarly articles show it's being used in various classrooms, digital gaming, psychology, and comparative religions. In my own work over the past year, I've applied the monomyth throughout my analysis, writing, and classroom participation. I've found the knowledge to be an effective tool, shaping many of the assignments that I've completed. Because of my participation in the Library Summer Scholars Program, I was selected to present at the inauguration Scholars Poster Showcase, and as a result, I created a poster for that. For a document design class, I was able to create a flyer for the Student Scholars Day abstract book, which you can also view on the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarship website. In writing for the web class, I wrote a blog entry on the monomyth, outlining it in a similar format to this speech and to my poster. I created an audio version of the original presentation for a nonfiction writing class and analyzed a play by Shakespeare using the framework. Finally, the monomyth has played a large role in my writing capstone course, influencing my genre experiments. Through the proposal, I had to rationalize why the monomyth was a relevant option. Applying it to a fictional piece in a deliberate, obvious way was a challenge of its own, resulting in a piece that mimics the ideology behind the flyer that I created for Student Scholars Day. And then lastly, I've applied the framework in the process of writing as a tool, creating a fairy tale piece that is my lead writing sample for my writing capstone. At the end of the survey period, 65 Grand Valley State University students had taken the Monomyth survey. 40 of them were familiar with the Monomyth framework, and 32 responded that they were interested in knowing more. Hopefully, the subject guide can help fill this gap in knowledge. I'd like to offer special thanks to Maya and Hazel, the Grand Valley State University librarians who mentored me. For more information on the monomyth, you can access the subject guide with the QR code on this slide or at libguides.gvsu.edu/monomyth. Its creation was sponsored by the Grand Valley State University Library Summer Scholars Program and the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarship. Thank you for listening.